Hello and welcome to our Tech for Good talks. Welcome, Gabby.
Hi, Puff.
Hey, so we have a very special Tech for Good talks in store today. We are going to be covering how to start an app development project. And this is a global Tech for Good talks today. So we've got Gabby in the UK and I'm over here in the US. What an exciting one, Gabby. They usually keep us apart.
I know. So good morning, Puff.
Well, oh yeah, it's morning for me and afternoon for you. What is it? What, 3 p.m. your time?
Yes, it is. It is.
Okay, amazing, amazing. Well, did you want to intro yourself, Gabby, for those of you that don't know you?
Yeah, fantastic. So, hi, everyone. I'm Gabby, as Puff has kindly mentioned already, and I head up client success at Three Sided Cube. So, I'm, as Puff said, based in the UK, and I get the pleasure of working with clients in the early stages of their projects to basically find the projects which are aligned with our mission, which Puff will tell you a bit more about in a minute. And I get to work with them in those really early stages, making sure we set them on the path to success.
And I shouldn't say it, Gabby, but you are definitely part of the best team. I feel like marketing are not going to be very happy with me saying that right now. But yes, and for those of you that don't know me, I'm Sophia, but everyone knows me as Puff. And I look after the US side of things. So very focused on client success like Gabby. And we are here today to be talking about how to start an app development project. And to give you a very high level agenda of what we're going to be covering today. And it makes me smile because we're going to be covering probably the three most popular questions we always get asked. And I know Gabby's nodding her head. So we're going to be covering how much does an app cost? How long does an app take to design and develop? And then probably one of the most important questions is actually how to measure the impact, which is perhaps something that people don't talk enough about. And then we'll try and keep that very, very short, very sweet. We'll end with some of our top tips. And then we're going to get into this amazing panel that Gabby is going to be wonderfully facilitating for us. So we have some of our clients, but they're also people that use other agencies, so they're not biased. Although, I mean, you know. And then what we'll do is we'll give you guys at home an opportunity to ask any questions that you might have of our wonderful panelists today, and of course Gabby and I as well, if we can answer anything that is on your mind or that's worrying you right now. And then we'll do a wrap up. We're hoping that we will be no longer than an hour. We'll have probably 10-15 minute intro. We'll get into that panel. It'll be a lovely juicy panel. I think we've got 4 big questions to get answered, but like I said, we welcome questions from you guys at home, and then we'll wrap up. Probably should start with a little bit about us and who we are, what we do. And I'm going to start with our mission. Okay. And our mission at Three Sided Cube is to change millions of lives for the better. And I mean, that is something that we're all incredibly proud of here at Three Sided Cube. And it's something that really drives each and every one of us. And we do that through designing and building what we call tech for good. So technology that has a positive impact. So for us, what gets us excited and gets us out of bed every morning is knowing that we could be, and are in quite a lot of cases, saving lives or changing lives for the better. Okay, whether it's around education, disaster preparedness, blood donation, health and fitness, whatever it might be, it's got to have that positive impact. It's got to be able to change millions of lives for the better. And I think it's really important to note that, these Tech for Good talks, especially for me, are so important because they allow us an opportunity to shine a light on positive examples of how technology can be used. We need to remember that actually the technology is agnostic. Okay, it's not right or wrong, it's not good or bad, it's the actors behind it who are designing and developing and delivering the tech that have these very big ethical choices of whether or not they're going to be using it for good or bad. And I like to say we pride ourselves at 3 Study Cube to make sure that we are using technology in the right way and having the best possible, most positive impact that we can have. There are lots of, I don't know, dark patterns and things that can be avoided, and we always try and do that. But I think it's important to remember that it's the technology. It shouldn't have a bad name, right? It is agnostic. It doesn't just suddenly get born and get developed and it's being used for bad. It doesn't at all. There is a whole design and development process behind it. And I think it's important we remember that. So enough of me waffling. I think the biggest question and probably the most important, well, not saying the most important, the most popular question we get asked, Gabby, is how much does an app cost?
Yeah, I was just going to say that. I think hands down, I mean, you set it up lovely saying these were the top 3, but I think hands down, this is probably the most common question we get asked in the client success team. And I think the short answer is, I'm really sorry, there isn't a magic number or like a one size fits all option that you can just roll out. What we've tried to do in this conversation and kind of on the screen for you is give some examples of the types of apps and some starting ballparks, I guess, of where you might be considering that starting point. To save me going through each and every one, I kind of wanted to highlight really how we get to that ballpark and what the kind of things for us, but also for yourselves to consider as you move towards that journey of really discovery and how you can budget for the development of an app. So you'll see on the screen 3 examples there, and the difference here is complexity, right? So a massive thing that you need to remember is you're buying developers time. How much time is it going to take for them to build the app that's your vision? It's going to help you achieve your mission. The more time it takes, just the more expensive that is going to be to build. So really, really important thing to think about. And then in addition, what adds to complexity is the features, right? So the bigger the features, the more features you have, all of that is going to add up to a more expensive product. But also another thing to think about is like users' expectations around that. So you've got e-commerce on there, you've got some big competitors out there. Users' expectations of what that app is going to do, the way it's going to behave, and the types of features that need to be included is much higher than certain other apps. And it's certainly something to consider. And I think on the next screen, we've got quite a few examples which range from social networking apps and on-demand app, gaming app. They are really good examples of your users' expectations are going to be much higher. With any kind of messaging platform, the standard has been set with really mature apps that have been well invested in the markets now. I can sit here and name them, I don't really need to, but the likes of Facebook and Instagram and, those users' expectations of me being able to react to it, to be able to reply, to be able to private message, they're all expectations when I come on a different app that I'm going to have of what I can do. These costs also, there is variations depending on your chosen app team. So agencies like apps come in all different shapes and sizes and with different day rates attached to that. So you can go for a much cheaper option. So freelance developers, that can be the best route for you, particularly if you're trying to get something kind of rough and ready to prove a concept out there. But you also may need a really experienced agency with a breadth of skills. That's super important for building a product that's both technically robust and beautiful to use. We've talked about users' expectations. Users won't use an app that doesn't work perfectly. They're going to get annoyed and frustrated and not come back. So you really need to understand what does this version 1 look like for you? What are your requirements? And that will also have an impact on cost. A couple of other things before I kind of stop talking about it, is operating systems. So with mobile apps, you've got 2, you've got iOS and you've got Android, you've got Apple and Google essentially. So lots of things to think about there. Do you need both? Where are your users? And if you thought about things like hybrid, where you can build a lot of the platform on one code base and push it out across 2. There's lots of pros and cons between building natively and hybrid. They're things to consider. They're not always, the cost doesn't always come on the outset. So hybrid can reduce the costs initially, can have higher costs on the ongoing basis and in the long term. They're things to consider against your budget. And really, that's also where we always highlight and are very transparent about costs at 3 Study Cube. Ongoing costs is definitely something to be researching, considering, and really doing your due diligence around with any agencies that you're speaking to. because it's not just the outset costs that you'll need to consider when building an app. You've got hosting, you've got support costs, you've got those maintenance, and you've also got continuous improvement. Again, you really will need to invest in the app to keep it engaging for users and fantastic, and adapting to the ever-changing environments that we all live in. So really key things to consider as you move forward in your journey. I think also, remember that this isn't an upfront cost that you need to kind of consume all in once. So think about payment milestones, discuss those payment milestones with your app development company, because, you're not going to pay 150 grand or 250 grand upfront. That's going to come in a scheduled payment. So be comfortable with that. And at the very least, have those transparent, open conversations. The other thing to just mention on cost, I've said it, we get asked it the most, and we certainly do. The question we ask back the most is, what is your budget? It's really important to be transparent about your budget. As transparent as you can be. We understand people need to plan and need to secure budgets, and there's a bit of a chicken and egg in there sometimes. But, be transparent, because it really helps ensure you're finding the right partner for you, the right development partner to help you get where you need to be. So I think transparency is a really, really key thing. We're always transparent about costs, but just kind of biggest tip from me, I know I'm going too fast ahead, Puff, but when it comes to cost, is also be transparent back in those conversations, and hopefully you'll get some good conversations and find the best fit for you. Amazing. I think now we're going to be moving on to
how long.
There we go.
Thanks, Gabby. And you raised some excellent points there. I think ultimately, the more transparent you can be, the better the result in terms of what you're coming up with. And that includes, a payment plan, payment schedule. Right. How long does it take to build an app? Oh my gosh. I could reply to that with, how long is a piece of string? Because like the first question, there is no one set answer, because it really can vary. But what we've tried to do is pull together some very rough timings to help manage expectations. And like I say, there's not a one size fits all. We've worked on projects that we've delivered in, as little as 6 weeks, but we've worked on projects that have taken a year. Like, it really can.
Oh, I don't know if Puff's just dropped off for anyone else. I'm gonna assume that Puff will be back in a second, and maybe just take over at this point, if that's okay, and just continue to talk around how long does an app build take while Puff comes back to us. So yeah, I think, just to also highlight that this is all contained in a super comprehensive how-to guide that we have, which is tagged and can be shared on the resources. So in terms of the brief, so yes, you've got kind of several stages, including writing a project brief. It's really important that you have that time to sit down and really think about what it is that you're trying to achieve, and put that down onto paper, not just for your kind of internal stakeholders to align, which is crucially important, but also for your potential technical partner to be able to come and actually understand what you're trying to achieve, and give you the most accurate indication of a more comprehensive timeline, for example, or estimated costs, or like just those kind of key considerations to be thinking about. That discovery time is super, super important. We call it here a discover and define. And those sprints are super important to really, really, really understand what your requirements are and validate them with real users. We have been in the game a long time, 13 years at 3studyCube, and still, we don't always get it right first time, just because we think it's a great idea and our clients do. It's really important we validate that with users in initial user testing. And then that you have that time to really define that technical architecture. So lots of different ways of building software, and you want to make sure you're building it in the best possible way for you. Wireflows and design sprints. So super important that you think around that design and you're implementing the best user experience before you actually put any of that development, that coding time down. So really important, 2 or 3 weeks, whatever that kind of looks like. Again, this is very dependent on the size of the project and what we need to achieve in order to set ourselves up for success in those development sprints. And then the development sprints themselves. So this is quite broad, and it really does go back to those cost questions and answers we were talking about earlier in terms of, you know, the complexity, what is it that we're building, and the time related to it. But giving those development sprints, we build in 2-week cycles, and they go build, test, review. So we're really making sure that testing on a modular level is built into those development sprints. And that's really crucial so that you can test everything at a feature level. But also what you do want to do is have that quality assurance and regression testing time. And in addition, user acceptance testing. So really making sure that the client has had that time to review and that you're essentially happy with what has been built, and that your agency has built everything they promised, and that it's working exactly how you would expect it. Then you want that time for any final fixes. Make sure everyone is happy before you can do the pre-flight checks and ship. So submitting to the app stores and making sure that your app is available to the people that you want to access it and need to access it. And then we mentioned it briefly in the cost section. Continuous improvement is really important to plan into your timescales. So just because you release that V1, it won't be everything your heart desires. We know that's not the case. You'll have big roadmaps of what you want to achieve. And also, as we said before, the environments your users are in are ever changing, and you need to be adaptive and flexible and agile with that. So thinking about those continuous improvement plans, and I would say that's an annual commitment you need to make. That can vary between, you know, one development cycle to 8 in a year. It really does vary on appetite and the roadmap, as I say, and what the needs are. And then support, really crucially. So support is your chance to have a development team on hand that can dive in and do any fixes for you so that your users have minimal disruption when inevitably things slightly go wrong with software or bugs creep in. You've got a team on hand to fix those as quickly as possible. Don't know if Puff is back yet, but I'm just going to carry on and she can dive in if and when she returns. So how should I measure the success of an app? So I think Puff teed this up really, really nicely in her introduction. It's a super important question that we like to be discussing with our clients at the earliest possible stage. We're passionate about making sure that we can all celebrate at the end of a project and say, yes, we did it. We achieved that. And what we want to be aligning on here is what are we toasting to? What are we celebrating in that moment? So on the screen are some of the key areas you might want to consider. What I would caveat here is they will be different depending on your mission or your cause or what you're trying to achieve. And particularly those specific mission ones and impact ones will vary. But these are a really good starting point to be thinking about, including like engagement. So tracking how your users are engaging with the app. You know, how often are they actively engaging with the app? You can have lots of different metrics about this, but it's really important that you're not just focusing on those initial downloads, but you're actually focusing on engagement as well. Behavioral. So when they're using the app, well, how are they behaving? What are they doing? What actions are they taking? Where are they engaging with the app most? Really understanding the way your users are interacting with the app will help you best be positioned to understand where you can improve the app in those continuous improvement cycles. Outcome. Again, what is the desired outcome? How can we track this? So essentially that's what we're trying to get to here. So if we're talking about increasing donations, you know, we can track that. Can we see, yes, we've achieved that, and this is how we're monitoring that? And again, if there's anything that we can optimize throughout the journey in those continuous improvement plans, this is a really important one for us to be like, that's something we can optimize and make sure that we're achieving more around that desired outcome. And then retention. So it's really important once you get those users to download your app and they've got your app on their phone, how are you going to keep them engaged? How are you going to retain them around that? So that's again something that we really want to be tracking. And that is a real whistle-stop tour of the kind of key tips. And then what we wanted to just quickly summarize was our how to pick an agency top tips. We, again, are really passionate about people finding the best partner, the best technical partner for their projects. So we've got some top tips here, which we're going to be chatting you through. So A really key one for us is if this is a new area to you and you're not sure about what the process should be or the pitfalls, is have someone that has some knowledge on your side. That's really, really key. And it is an expensive thing, investing in building an app. So if you haven't got that in-house, look at hiring that in and bringing that resource in. It will, in the long term, put you in a much stronger position, I think, to know that you've made the right decision. Do your research. So there are lots of agencies out there. Do your research, speak to clients, ask for case studies and references. There's lots of ways to understand and to do that deeper dive into different agencies to make sure you find the right fit around that team. I think for me, particularly when I've sat client side on this, there's two sides to it. There's the technical competence. There's, can they deliver what I need them to deliver? And then there's also the culture fit. What's important to us as an organization? What do we need? And do they understand that? Do they value that? It's really key. As we said already, be transparent and expect transparency back. I think it's a two-way thing, and it's really healthy for relationships to start on that basis and grow from there. That's around cost, but it's around, how your team works, for example, the stakeholders, what you're going to need. So anything that's useful to be aware of. I think people sometimes think they need to keep their cards close to their chest, but, I think to set off on a good foot, be transparent. And as we say, expect transparency back. Meet the team. Yeah, ask to see the team. It doesn't have to just be the likes of me and Puff that you'll initially be speaking to. We're very open about our team, and we can, get you to be introduced to people that you'll be working on, whether that's mobile developers or back-end developers or the creative team. So do ask to see that wider team as well, and make sure you feel the same as you do with them as you do with the sales team. And then, top tips, keep the users at the heart of everything you do. It's absolutely the bread and butter of what we do at 3Study Cube. Users are the key. They will help you get that success, and they will help you achieve that mission that you're trying to achieve. Certainly for us, without our clients and without their users and the users of our products, we wouldn't be able to say we know we're changing millions of lives for the better. So crucially important. And again, these are just a snippet of a much larger document with more details. So if you are particularly interested, it is in resources that you can download. But without further ado, I know this is what everyone has been waiting for. So we're going to kick off with the panel. I'm going to ask our fabulous panelists to just start popping their cameras on and popping up on my screen. Fabulous. There are other people here. I was starting to get worried that it was literally just me for a minute there. So fantastic. Thank you for all joining. So we have got the wonderful panelists here to be talking about several areas that their experiences of working with different agencies and their kind of top tips as well. As a little reminder to everyone, there is an opportunity for questions at the end. We'll leave a good 10 minutes for questions at the end. So please do pop your questions in the chat function as we go through, and we will get to them as soon as we possibly can. So I am going to kick off with some introductions for everyone. So Amelia, you are first on my screen, and I'm wondering if you would possibly be able to introduce yourself and your organization a little bit, please.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, I'm Amelia Larrard. I'm the marketing manager at a small to medium-sized charity called the Child Brain Injury Trust. I've worked for the charity for about 6.5 years now. Very passionate about what we do, got some personal experience, so it's a fantastic charity and I love to work for them. A bit about the charity and what we do as a charity: we support children and young people with acquired brain injuries. So that is brain injury after birth, from anything such as a road traffic accident, illness, from meningitis, lots of different ways that people can acquire brain injuries, from having falls and that sort of thing. So we support right from the hospital setting into the community, into schools. We work closely with siblings and other family members as well. So it's not just the child and parent that we do that direct support with. So we have ABI coordinators that are dotted around the UK. So we're a UK-wide charity, and we support all of the family. So it's really fab work we do. And we launched an app 2 years ago nearly. So that's our link with 3Sided Cube. So we launched See It in Hand 2 years ago, and I'm sure I'll be telling you all about it today.
Fantastic. And you are just an incredible organization. So thank you so much for joining us today. And Kelly, can you please do a little introduction and tell us more about your organization as well, please?
Sure. Hello, everybody. It's nice to be here today. I am Kelly McGrath, CEO and co-founder of Planet 3. Planet 3 is a tech app for learning. Middle school science is where we're starting. And the purpose of our app and the company is to embolden the next generation of students and teachers to positively impact the planet's health and our human behavior associated with the planet. So we are ready to release our first app in the App Store in the next month or so. So we've been working on an iOS app, and we've partnered with Three Sided Cube to help us with the design and discover phase for our overall product, which of course is for students and teachers. So we've got a robust roadmap, but really excited to be at this phase and working with Three Sided Cube.
Thank you. And, you know, I did tell everyone it was a fantastic panel. We're not even through the introductions yet. And I'm already like, wow, this is incredible. So Nick, no pressure. I know you're equally fantastic, but please, can you introduce yourself and tell us more about your organization, please?
Yes. So I'm Nick Pollard. I co-founded together with my wife, Family Mental Wealth, together with our daughter. So it's a family founded, and our daughter Lizzie is a medical doctor. But when she was a teenager, she was very ill with anorexia, nearly died, in fact, had an emergency admission to hospital that literally saved her life, and then 6 months in an inpatient unit. And she'll always say that she's forever thankful for the health professionals who helped her. But what really made the difference for her was the family-based self-help, which was made possible because my background is in psychology. And so we were able to apply what's now called the New Maudsley method for skills-based caring, developed at South London and Maudsley NHS and King's College London. And it's all about using evidence-based interventions that are normally delivered by a clinician, but instead delivered within a family environment where parents and carers are trained and equipped to be able to do that. So we're creating all sorts of resources. And one of those is well, because we work with the NHS, we have to call it a digital medical device, but to you and me, it's an app. An app called Headway, which is all about providing parents and carers with those knowledge and skills, and then providing insight tools so they can get to understand what's going on inside their child's mind, and therapeutic activities that the child can use to help them build their mental health. And the prototype has gone through its first user testing phase with our colleagues at the School of Psychology at the University of Sussex. And the results for the usability testing were just overwhelming, just so positive. And so we're now talking with our funders, which is the Department for Health, part of the UK government. We're talking with our funders about moving on to efficacy testing. Actually, not only do the young people and the families enjoy using this, but what effect will it have on their mental health? And also then creating a fully deployable app, not just the prototype, but actually the full deployable that can be available for everybody. And Three Sided Cube have been absolutely wonderful partners through the whole time. We've loved working with them and still continue to. Don't know what we do without them.
Oh, Nick, you are a sweetie. But thank you so much. That is just a fantastic breadth of skills and experience as well. And I think, you know, it's really great to be able to kick off with our first question, which kind of leads on from where I left off in that introduction, really. You know, we gave our top tips around how to pick an agency. So sitting agency side, we see the dips and the missed opportunities and the areas for success. But I'd love to be able to ask you all the big question of, like, how did you go about picking the right agency or agencies that you're currently working with? Kelly, I'm going to kick off with you because I understand that you're working with multiple agencies in the process. So what was that process like for you in that choosing phase?
I would say that we were fortunate in that we had experience with various partners previously, both my co-founder and myself. So we weren't going into selection blind, which is always a good thing when you have experience working with other partners, both good and bad in terms of like how to decide how you want to move forward. But I would say that for me, a common mission or vision that you can relate to is critically important. And I think I respect the design process and think of it as such a critical aspect of any product that I want to go forward with or have a brief for. And so having a partner who really respects design and is willing to spend time in that initial design and discover phase, I think is really critically important. No matter what they call it, you need to spend time looking at your assumptions and expectations deeply and working with users to make sure that you're moving forward in a direction that represents their biggest need or solves a problem.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. That, you know, around like, will they care? Like, and what does that alignment really bring in addition? I think is super powerful for people, particularly in the for good space. But also, you're right, in the industry, we all call it different things, but you know, a version of that initial discovery where you can really get into the weeds and really understand what, from a design perspective, but also from a technical perspective, you're going to be delivering and aligning, particularly agency to client, is crucially important. And I think Kelly's absolutely right. Look for that in your partner. Like, what's their process? Has it been tried and trusted? And actually do your research for the wider industry, I think is really key, particularly if you haven't got that fantastic experience that Kelly and her co-founder actually had that gave them that little bit of a head start, I guess, and confidence of knowing how to run that. But thank you. That's really fantastic. I really appreciate that. And Amelia, for you and CBIT, was that a similar process that you underwent? And what were kind of your top tips around how to pick the right agency for you?
For us, it was, I suppose, a bit different, Kelly, because we had no experience and we were going in completely blind. So our CEO, Lisa Turan, started thinking about the concept of this app. I think she said way back in 2015, and she had this idea and she knew she wanted to do something with it, but didn't know where to even start, didn't know if it was possible, and didn't have a clue which agencies to even look into. So I think it was probably 2017, and she started just doing some general research and still was very overwhelmed by, there's a lot of agencies out there offering slightly different things, different costs, as you were saying earlier. So she booked in a couple of meetings, I think with about 5 different agencies. And really, from our point of view, especially being a charity, we're very values led. We needed to find an agency that really got what we did and understood the concept of what we wanted with the app, as well as what we do as a charity. So I think from the CEO's point of view, she really wanted that initial conversation for the agency just to be like, I get it, and I want to work with you. And the other thing for us was about how much help we needed with this. And I think when you have got zero experience with developing apps and what's involved with it, we needed an agency that were really going to hold our hand through the entire process and offer advice the whole time. And I think there are agencies out there that will say, well, give us your concept and we'll roll with it. But we wanted to be involved with each element of it as well. So I think it was really important when we had the conversations with Three-Sided Cube as well. We got that from the agency that actually we could be involved in every step, but you'd also hold our hand through it. So for us, that was really important. And I think the other thing was come down to cost. So cost is a big thing, but I think after having conversations, sometimes cheap isn't always best. And actually sometimes investing more money if you want more out of an agency is more beneficial. And that's actually what we found. It meant it took us a bit longer to get to where we wanted to be from a funding perspective. But yeah, that's something I would just say, that working with agencies that money is important, but investing is also a good thing, I think.
Absolutely. And building an app is an investment. And I think you're absolutely right. There's loads and loads of different agencies out there, and you will get people that are telling you it's very, very cheap. Then you'll get to people that are telling you it's a lot more money. And I think, you know, being realistic with yourself around if something sounds too good to be true, probably not true. I think is like the kind of biggest tip that we would have. We get quite a lot of people coming back to us with having worked with agencies and products that they're not happy with. And that is a double investment you've got to spend because you've got to go and do it elsewhere. But Amelia, particularly that coming from a charity that hasn't had experience with it and looking for really deep inside what matters to you. And again, those values and culture fit being really crucially important. But I think it's really amazing to highlight that it's okay to need kind of people that can translate technical to a client is absolutely true. You know, not everyone has a CTO, not everyone has that technical experience in their organization, and being honest with yourself about what you need from an agency will also really help ensure that you're finding the right one for you. So I think they're really powerful points. Thank you for raising them. And Nick, for yourselves at Family Mental Wealth, what was kind of the key process for you? And I guess how did you go about picking the right agency?
Yes, I suppose we had to start kind of like further back because we were securing government funding for this because it is such a big issue amongst, for the NHS. And one of the fundamental questions was, well, why don't we just hire our own team, build our own team? But as soon as you start investigating what's involved in the different stages of it, you realize you need such a broad team with so much different expertise that actually it's just not cost effective to do it yourself, and so one has to find an agency. Then, as Amelia said, finding an agency that shares your underlying vision and values. We're a social enterprise. We're into this, doing this to make a difference in the lives of young people and families. There are plenty of agencies that will just want to take your money, plenty of agencies that are focused on let's create something that's going to make loads of money, but actually one that says, actually, no, we want to transform lives is really important. But then also it's the thing of an agency also that would understand some of the other process elements for us of fulfilling that vision. So for us, because we're creating something to be used by the NHS, the point is it has to be solidly evidence-based and clinically sound. So a huge amount of research done by our academic and clinical partners, and that everything that is built has to draw upon and be true to that underlying psychological research. And then because we are very committed to creating stuff for families, it's a case of having it created by families for families. So then having a whole team of families who are then scoping ideas and scoping vision, or wouldn't it be good to do this, and wouldn't it be good to do that, and to be able to then to have an agency that can say, okay, we can look at the evidence-based stuff, we can understand that, we can look at the creative ideas of these families, and then we can show you how we can then turn that into something deliverable. That I think is a pretty special skill set and vision set, and we're delighted we found it with Three-Sided Cube.
Thank you. We're delighted to be working with you as well. And I think that is really key, especially around the collaboration aspect, when there's multiple stakeholders involved in a project, and that's the key to success. You're absolutely right. That evidence in have you done it before, when you're talking to those agencies, those potential partners, actually getting those case studies and speaking to clients is really, really crucially important. And, something we're always very open about here. We're always very happy for people to speak to our clients, and if our clients are happy to, obviously. I know I've sent a few Nick's way recently, but, it is really important that they get that, true kind of reflection of what were the pros and what were the challenges, so that you can make a really clear vision. So I think there's some really powerful tips there for everyone. And if there are any questions, again, please do remember you can add them in the chat, and we will leave some time at the end to get back to them. So the next question is people that have all been on this journey and either have apps imminently about to be out there or have apps that have been out there for quite a while now. You know, what was the process of defining what you wanted for your solution? You know, I would just want to dive a little bit into that and kind of the challenges and the opportunities as organizations as well. So Nick, I'm going to start with you because you've talked a bit about it in the last answer you gave, in terms of there was lots of process beforehand, but for you, what was the process of defining what you wanted for ultimately this fantastic product?
Well, I think, yes, picking up from where I left it, I feel like I'm reading a story to my granddaughter now. And last night, no, picking up where I left it, of that we, you know, the fundamental research done by our academic and clinical partners, the creative work done by the families, then the scoping and design done by Three-Sided Cube, and then an iterative process of that going out again for testing and usability testing by those families in a real situation. So the creative families then tested it, looked at it, and frankly, they were just so excited to see, I remember coming up with that idea, and look, there it is in the thing. So doing that, but of course there's tweaks to make to it. There's things that actually we could change this, we could change that, having that flexibility to make those changes, and then it going out for a wider usability testing, which is run for us by the University of Sussex, a wider usability testing with what in the psychology would be called naive subjects, but that's not very, that doesn't sound very nice. But people who haven't been involved, haven't got an investment in it. They just want to know, is this going to help? My child is not well. Is this going to help? And we've just, as I say, got that. Then the next stage, of course, is then the efficacy testing. Is it actually going to make a difference to the mental health of the children and actually the parents as well? They're what's technically called carer burden or carer anxiety, what they feel of caring for a child who is mentally unwell. And so that's the next stage. And then the next stage would then be testing it actually for effectiveness, which is different from efficacy. Efficacy is kind of a very controlled environment of a small number of people. Well, we'll have about 500, but I mean a number of people in an ideal situation. But then effectiveness, what's it like in a real world situation where Mrs. Smith brings in her daughter to the GP and the GP says, well, I can refer them to specialist services, but it's a 6 month, 1 year wait. There's 350,000 young people on the waiting list here in England alone. But actually, here's a tool that you can take away and use now. I'll give you access to Headway. How does that work in their real life? How does that work with the interface with the clinician? You know, so there's so much kind of development pathway that is important to us. And what's important is that one's agency understands that overall pathway and sees how they fit into that pathway. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting point, actually, because we talk a lot around like MVPs, and which is a minimum viable product. And I always say it's a minimum viable product for success. And I think it's really interesting to use Headway as an example, which is the product that Nick is talking about, because that staged, phased approach to releasing something and getting that really, really, really crucial user feedback from actually using the product as well means that we're not building one monolithic product and then putting it in the hands of users and getting this feedback that actually would have been really great if it had done X or Y. You know, user testing upfront when you're at the concept stage is crucially important for outlining some of the really difficult things that you don't have answers to. But realistically, there's only so much testing you can do before it's actually in users' hands, and that's when you're going to get really live, valuable environmental feedback. So it's a really interesting one around taking that phased approach and helping people understand that defining your product is there's a stage one and then there's a continuous staging to it. And actually that's what success looks like. And particularly if you're working with any legislation or policy, and particularly obviously the medical world is so important that you do it in the best possible way that means it's right for both the medical sector and the patient obviously that's using it. it's really, really good, I think, to be talking to people around, like, it doesn't have to be the whole thing. Like, what do you need from your first phase to be getting that really valuable feedback? So thank you, Nick. I think it's a really powerful thing to be highlighting to people. And Kelly, you're literally imminently about to release your product, right? So what tell us, what has the process been like for you of defining what you needed for that initial release?
Well, what I was thinking about as Nick was talking was focusing on the challenges, because I do feel like for Planet 3, we had a lot of challenge early on. And it was because we were bringing different groups together. So we're building an educational game that really is maximizing student engagement through 3D video gaming. So they're learning through a video game and then taking their learning and applying it to the real world. That's the goal. That's the secret sauce, is like, it's not all in the technology in the app. It's actually in physical work that they need to do outside of technology to impact their local world and solve real world problems. So there was a lot of tension initially in our teams as we brought them together, with game designers, media producers, and educators sitting around the table, feeling the tension of, is learning more important or is fun more important? And having true video gamers who have done video game design was critical to our success, because we didn't want to be just a superficial, quick and easy game. We wanted depth. We wanted big stories. We wanted impact, students feeling that immersion and the need to go back and do more, play more, and take their learning then and apply it so that they see their impact and feel their sense of accomplishment, with a reward system and things like that that come from the game world and apply to their classroom as well. So the tension of how to work together as a team, I think, is a critical part of success. It is about collaboration. It is about leaving your ego at the door. A lot of people with deep experience think they know the answers. For example, when you're in design and discover phase, they'll be like, I know what teachers want, or I know what makes students excited. And you may think you know, but if you go in with that sense of, I already know, you won't get surprised. You won't build an app or a solution that actually has a big impact and surprises and delights your users. And that's what we're going for, is that impact. So to me, the tension that you are likely to have is something that you want to set up protocols for, and something you want to make sure that your rules of engagement are clear with your teams, so that everybody goes into it having a sense of, like, I am not the most important person in the room. Everyone has a voice. Everyone needs to listen twice as much as they talk, right? All those skills and experiences are critically important for your team's success in the long term. And having partners who also believe in those same set of protocols and have a similar vision and sense about what it takes, I think, is really important and a key to success.
Wow, I love that. I love the tension talking about that, because I think often we talk about collaboration in such like a positive, and obviously it's all positive. You should collaborate. You need collaboration for success, but actually talking about the tension that it can bring, and needing to leave your egos at the door to really have like a successful discovery phase, I think is really important, because we are all working towards wanting the same thing. And I think sometimes that can get lost, and also being looking inwards and being like, do I want to be challenged, I think is really key, because some people just don't, they don't want to be challenged. But actually, if you do, finding a partner, we do challenge, like, we are passionate about building products that users are going to love and is going to change lives for the better. So actually being honest with that as well, and as you say, coming in fully aware that you're going to need to leave egos at the door to accept that, I think it's really powerful.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. And last but not least, obviously, Amelia. So the process for you was a little while ago. I do appreciate that. But you were ongoing on this process with us. So the process of defining what you wanted for the project, can you tell us a little bit about that from CBIT's point of view, please?
Yeah, so the first thing I will say is that the defining what you want from it will probably change as you go along, and we have found that, and you'll want so much more from it as well as time comes on, which is fine, and it's fine for your defining to change as well as you're going along. And I think I'm sure our CEO won't mind me saying that her initial concept for the app and defining what she wanted then has changed to when we actually launched it. And I think that really came down to us sitting down with beneficiaries of the charity and having those conversations with them. Actually, if this app was live, and the whole idea concept behind the app is to support families that we aren't able to get in contact with. So they might be going into A&E departments with a head injury or concussion and leaving the hospital and not having that level of support. So the whole idea behind the app is to fill that gap. If they don't know about the charity, they can find out about it through the A&E department and download the app. So we knew that's what we wanted from it, but we wanted to find out from the families who had that experience, what would they have found useful in that situation, or when they got home, what information did they need? And it could be that their son or daughter might have been experiencing headaches 2 weeks after concussion and didn't know what to do. They were Googling it and they needed to find out more information. Do they need to panic? So the app really, for us, we wanted it to be there for them to access that level of information. So we got that from talking to beneficiaries, and they said this level of information would be useful for us, and this is what we would want from it. And so many families that we had been supporting for years before had said to us, actually, if the app existed a couple of years ago, that would have been really handy for us. So at that point, we knew actually this, slots in. This is what we want to do with it. But it wasn't just the beneficiaries are obviously the most important, but we wanted to speak to clinicians as well, because there's a part of the app that we want clinicians to be sharing it with families in hospital settings. And so we wanted to get their input on sort of the terminology and the way we word things. And although we're not a medical charity, we offer practical and emotional support. We wanted to get their input and make sure that we were hitting the nail on the head with it, really, and getting it right. So we got input from them as well. So they really helped with sort of defining what information we put into the app, and also other professionals. So like Nick was saying, people that don't know anything about it and just download the app, and actually would they find the information useful? But there's still loads we want to do with it. So like I said, the defining process, the concept and your objectives will probably remain the same, but you'll just want to keep adding to it and developing it more. And I think that's what we have found. It just makes it more exciting because you just know you're just adding more depth to this app, and it's really, it's exciting.
And it's also what a successful product should be. I think that's in a nutshell. Like, V1 will be your V1, and hopefully V1 will be hugely successful. But Amelia's just summed it up so perfectly. Like, the landscape changes, users change, the needs change, but also your vision and your ambition and what you can see that's missing. You'll need that kind of roadmap. And as you say, that defining never ends kind of thing. It's always live and agile, which is fantastic. But those points that I think have come out lovely in everyone's actually of co-creation and users at the heart of the process is absolutely crucial, because any of us can think this is a great idea and know, it'd be really great if they had this. But as you're saying, Amelia, the way the language is, and also how much detail is there, because if you're in a stressful environment and you're worried, actually, do you need loads of detail, or actually is it just a quick one-liner that's going to help you? And then you can dive into the detail once you've had that initial kind of guidance, I suppose. There's lots of things to consider in terms of how people want to be communicated with as well, which is fantastic.
And from our point of view, families are, like you said, it's overwhelming stage for them. And what they really want is just some basic information. And if anyone's been in hospital and you're talking to clinicians, you get so many words thrown at you that you don't understand names of different clinicians you're speaking to every day. And the app kind of breaks it down in a way that it's just basic information for them. And I think that's what we got from talking to families that they wanted. So it does really help having those conversations beforehand, I'd say.
Absolutely. I think that's, yes, 100% that. That's exactly why, and a great example. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to dive into a couple of questions that have come through now from the wonderful people that are joining us, just so we can get those answered. So we have had an inquiry about someone that's looking actually to start a project, very excitingly, a Pokemon Go style app for a project they're running, Stories of Glasgow. So hoping to work with the community and local schools and students to co-create the app. So hopefully you've got some lovely content there from everyone giving their experiences of co-creation, which we absolutely advocate for. Does anyone have any experience of this and advice on how we should go about this? Not being app savvy themselves, they're looking to learn and perhaps partner with folk here to help develop the app. So I think all our wonderful panelists have talked a lot around co-creation and the challenges around that, but also the extreme benefits of working with that. Just an example that we've got ourselves, we're lucky enough to work with the Environment Agency, and we've are actually in development for a co-created app with young people around actionable climate change challenges that they can do to help young people be more sustainable. And it's really, really powerful to have that feedback at various stages. I think working with your agency very early on around what those capabilities are and what the key points are for feedback as well is really crucial to ensure that it's fed in the timely and right manner so that you can keep on track to processes. But absolutely finding the right partner that can enable that with you is really powerful. And Nick, I'm going to come to you because you just unmuted, so I'm guessing.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think also in that, I know very little about Pokemon Go, by the way, but I do see people on the campus here around with their phones. But I think it does raise that whole thing to think about the relationship between how the app delivers interaction in the virtual world and how it facilitates interaction in the physical world. Because, you know, you've got the two, you've got the virtual world there on the screen, but you've got your physical world where you live and move and have your being. Now, notice I'm not saying real world, because that's the umbrella. They're all real world. You know, real world is both the virtual and the physical. But what's the interplay between them? How does it enable? And that's been an interesting thing for us that we were working through in our development, and we've also evaluated in our user testing, is the extent to which this app helps them, the young person, through what they're interacting with, but also how it facilitates interactions in the physical world as well. And I think that's a clear kind of thing to kind of work through of whatever you're doing. You know, how do those relate, and how can one build one to the other? It's very easy to get just so excited about what you're creating in the actual app, and oh, look, it can do this, without thinking then, okay, how does that enable interfacing in the physical world in which people live out the rest of their lives?
Absolutely. And like you say, Nick, you know, it's very much where those young people are. They are in games. I have two fabulous stepchildren who are 13 and 10, and they live in those worlds. So particularly if you're trying to engage with that that audience, you do need to make sure it's gamified, it's entertaining. And I think Kelly said, you know, fun and educational. Like, there's absolutely no need to be one or the other. You can definitely do both.
And I would just add that getting students to be part of the team is critical as well. And you can do that making sure you sign, you know, get privacy documents in line with their parents, for example. But you can do things like hold a pizza party in your office and have your team invite all of their family, you know, with young children, depending on the age, into the pizza party. And you can have a hackathon, or there are so many different types of events you can hold where you can get students in the mix. It doesn't have to be just in the school environment, but schools are willing definitely to have people come in to develop products, especially when you're willing to actually listen and not just have someone test a product and take their information, right? That iteration and that collaboration with school systems, I think, is something they do. They will take on if there is, something in it for them, of course, because their time is so valuable. But I do think getting students into the mix is a critical aspect of the experience.
Absolutely. And as you say, that ownership, that making sure it comes from an authentic place, but also, yeah, go with incentivization. Definitely incentivize it. I want to come to your pizza party, Kelly. So I understand why everyone else will. So that's fantastic advice. We have one quick last question that I want to just dive into before I let everyone go, because I know we're pretty close on time. But how do I know if I should develop a website or a mobile platform? From Three-Sided Cube's point of view, I can answer this one pretty quickly. Like, you need to understand where your users are. Like, that's really, really crucial in terms of that. We get a lot of people coming to us thinking they need a mobile app, and actually what they need is a web platform. Is really worth considering and user testing that, because it is a different price point, and it is really important that you're providing a solution that is going to be most effective for your users. So I definitely say, to answer that question, you need to really understand what you're building and where your users are going to go most and how they're going to interact with your products. So they're happy to talk about that further if that's something people would like to discuss with me further. Sorry, Nick, any closing thoughts on that?
Just going to say, well, from our experience, of course, we've kind of gone between them. So we're creating we're planning to create this app, deployable app, but our first stage of the prototype is built on a web platform, because that's easier to then test, try out, make modifications for. It's as we move to the next stage that would actually do it in an app platform. But the interesting spin out from that is, having created this content and user tested it on a web platform, we've then had people say, well, can we actually have that into our website? So while we are creating the app, we're also in parallel making available what we're calling plugins, which people can plug in to their website, so that an organization, whether it's a health insurance company or a NHS body or whatever, can say, okay, well, we have these people that we serve. We want to keep them on our website, but rather than reinventing the wheel and creating our own mental health tools, let's plug in your mental health tools. So actually, it's not an either or. In the development process, it can be, you can move from one to the other, and in the actual deployment, one can be moving from one to the other as well, or deploying both.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it's those phases. But I would say, thinking, as Nick said, where are your users? Like, if your users are on the web as well, like, that's a really powerful way of engaging them with your product. I thank you, Amelia, Kelly, Nick. I felt like I could talk to you all day, and I probably would if I didn't have someone telling me I need to wrap things up. So thank you so much for giving your time today to come and talk to us, to share your experiences, being so open, honest and transparent with everyone. It's been fantastic. So thank you so much. And just as some closing thoughts for everyone that has joined us, please do remember we run these Tech for Good talks monthly. So I know that our next one is on women in tech. So we will have Puff back then. She has let me know that she has had a power cut, so she's fine. But unfortunately, she's got no power. So but I promise you the next one will be me and Puff still, and we will be back to talk to you about our experiences and to have some wonderful guests chatting to you about women in tech. We will send out those details for you all, so you will get that in the follow-up email, and the dates and the times and the sign-up links. But thank you again to our wonderful panelists for joining us today, and thank you for everyone that joined us from home as well. Take care and speak soon. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.